Camera speed. Playback.
Welcome to A Social Place from Ammolite Studios and Emil Nava, which is me.
I'm a music video director, filmmaker, been in the game since I was 17, and along the way, I've worked with some of the most amazing talents in the whole world. In our first ever season of A Social Place, I've invited some of my fellow creatives to join me in sharing their stories of how they found their way into the industry.
Welcome to A Social Place. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Paul Weber, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice to be here.
Am I getting the second name right? Weber?
Yeah, Weber.
You don't say...
Two B's.
Two B's.
Not
you
to
don't
be
say
confused.
second name in America, do you?
When your parents are angry, you get both
You get
names.
the second... But
I get Weber a lot.
But you call it a second name.
Last name. Yeah.
They'd call you Weber if you were being naughty.
Or just generally, coaches, everyone, Weber.
Weber is good, though.
Yeah. Didn't have nicknames growing up?
Leo Legend at one point when I was a chef. I don't know why.
Clearly a good chef.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Oh, yeah, because the chef legitimately was like, I can't say your name. I was like, Emil. You're a chef that can't say a meal, like a meal for two. He was like, no, I can't say it. So he called me Leo. Welcome.
Thank you.
To my questions.
Let's get into it.
Introduce yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, I'm Paul Weber, born and raised in the Bay Area. Grew up in Pacifica, just south of San Francisco. Lived in Oregon for 12 years, so went north for college and stayed up there for a while, and then just moved down here. And I work in brand marketing for Adidas Basketball, global brand director. We just moved down here 2 years ago, right around when we met, and been in LA ever since.
How's LA?
It's been great.
Yeah?
It's been great. I came from Portland, Oregon, which is an amazing, I don't know if you've spent a ton of time there. I don't know if we've talked about that.
I have not spent that much time there, but I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah.
I've got a vision of what it's like as well.
It's probably close to that.
So yeah, glad to have you on. First question, what's your favourite ever music video?
Man.
It's been some bangers. Mine's Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River. To me, it's like the perfect video. Obviously, Missy Elliott videos, seminal.
Yeah.
Some Beastie Boys classics.
This might be a controversial one in the current state of where things are at. When Ye put out the Runaway video,
yeah,
it was like a feature-length film almost. Mm-hmm. And we'll probably get into it, but a lot of my inspiration has been folks that tell stories outside of regular formats. So
Sure.
like a traditional music video is 3 minutes, and they went 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I will say, though, a fan of a lot of yours as well. The one with Pharrell, Justin Timberlake, that most recent one was so much fun to watch. And just like the process too, seeing behind the scenes in the process and how you kind of made it, which you wouldn't necessarily know just watching it, but asking them to sing in reverse or dance in reverse.
That was crazy.
That's cool as well. So I got to show some love too.
Oh, cheers. You know, you've obviously got an amazing job. You've created an amazing career. Like for the listeners and people watching, like how did you get into it? And how would someone get into the type of work you do?
Yeah. I grew up, like I said, in the Bay Area, played a lot of basketball growing up and played other sports as well, but basketball was the one that I really fell in love with and had the most heart for. My doctors said that I was going to be 6'4" as part of why I picked basketball. I thought like maybe I would have a career here. I was going to be tall and didn't grow to be 6'4".
Wow.
And probably should have stuck to tennis.
Absolutely baited you out.
Yeah. So my basketball career wasn't going to go beyond high school as far as like playing the game. So it kind of forced me to like look inward. I was always thought that maybe I would be able to play in college and would figure it out. So I had to kind of look inward a little bit. And what I realized was, well, you can have a career in sports without necessarily being a professional athlete. And I don't know that that's something growing up that I ever really thought about. You would always watch the ads or buy the shoes, and at least for me, like I wasn't close to the industry of it and didn't really think about that. And so as I was kind of doing some soul searching, figuring out like, what do I want to do after playing basketball, realizing that you could have a career in that space and to develop ads, design shoes, and do all of those things was super appealing. And I spoke with a college counselor kind of as I was like wrapping up like senior year of high school. And she was like, well, if you want to do that, Adidas and Nike are both in Portland. It's not that far away.
Wow,
and
that was the advice they gave.
Yeah, they knew they had...
Respect that counselor. I mean,
for sure. Yeah, they knew that they were there. They knew the offices were there. And I'd been telling, like what I wanted to do was, you talked about music videos earlier, but I was inspired a lot growing up just by the advertisements that were kind of playing out in the basketball space in particular.
Back in the day, I feel like advertising was so powerful, and it was always trying to like move the needle, open conversations, like push the boundaries. It was just a different era, I think.
Well,
back
YouTube
then.
wasn't really like a thing, and content in this. It was really like movies, shows, and then you had your advertisements, and I'm sure, of course, there was other things, but the ads became your like the equivalent of like looking at motivational videos now on YouTube or whatever. They were like, at least in that era. I always kind of was drawn to that. I didn't know that you could make a career out of that. I didn't think that there were people behind the scenes that were doing that. I don't think I really gave it that much thought until I started looking inward and talked to this counselor, and she was like, go to University of Oregon. They have a sports business program. They're constantly bringing folks from the industry down, and you can start to develop relationships, and maybe that can turn into a job, and that could be kind of your way in. So I took that advice, got into University of Oregon, got into the sports business program, got lucky enough to get close with some of the professors who, some were guest professors that were actually employees of these brands,
right?
Which was really cool, because then they can kind of give you like the real, like, here's how it is right now. A lot of the professors are either theoretical or kind of going off a textbook, and these professors that were kind of these guest professors would give you kind of like, here's a current business challenge, or here's a case study, think about this in a more modern way.
Wow, yeah, that is helpful, yeah.
Yeah, and so I got into the program. I ended up making friends with some grad school students that were kind of well into their careers, but were back getting their MBA. And one guy in particular, Rishi, who's a good friend of mine, ended up getting a job at Adidas. So he graduated before I did, and he got a job at Adidas, and we stayed close, and he invited me up, and we got to connect.
Got to stay close to all the heads, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be nice to everyone. You never know who's going to...
100%. I always thought I wanted to be an actor, like before even knowing what a director was. You know, it's like that's the glossy thing. Like,
it's what you see.
Like the athlete. Yeah,
it's what you see.
And the musician, I thought I want to be an actor musician, and then it was all like, oh, could I dance and all these things, and was I really a performer? And then it was like, oh wow, you can basically kind of still be a massive part of this, but not
in front of the camera.
Yeah, not the front and center.
And I don't think I had any concept of that until going to school up there and then getting connected in with Rishi. And then he ended up, I had just graduated, and I was kind of feeling down on myself because all my friends had gotten full-time jobs and I hadn't found a full-time job coming out of college. But Rishi reached out to me and was like, hey, there's an intern opportunity at Adidas. Would you be down to do that? And it was an opportunity to get my foot in the door. And I'd always been drawn to Adidas anyways, growing up, going to France, spending time out there. And so took that and never looked back.
Did you always have a passion for sneakers, or was it about sport?
For me, it was like such an obsession over the sport of basketball.
Yeah.
Like homepage on the desktop, which back in the day was an important thing. NBA.com, always checking the stats, the trading cards, the video games, everything about. Like, I couldn't get enough basketball growing up, playing, etc. A part of that, obviously, is the fashion and the sneaker side of it. I mean, you need them to play, but then growing up was kind of the rise of sneaker culture and the rise of kind of the fashion side of sneakers. And obviously that had been around, but kind of growing up in that wasn't always ever like a part of it. I wouldn't like classify myself as a sneakerhead, but was adjacent to it and was aware of it. And then I mentioned being half French. I was fortunate enough to spend time in France growing up in Paris, and got to see kind of more of the fashion side, and had a lot of older cousins that were into these fashion brands and kind of see that. So I kind of grew this obsession for fashion and for streetwear and for the product that came out of the industry as well, or that was coming out, not even of the industry. And so really I think it was the athletes was one thing, but it was everything that kind of was in basketball culture.
It must be one of the main sports, right, that's connected that closely to fashion.
I would say
it
so.
It must be, right? Because I would say I'm more on the fashion side than the sports side. But I'm trying to think, like, for me growing up it was like football, right? But football's got no real connection. And
I think more and more you're seeing it. Like, I think a lot of athletes now are paying closer attention to what they're wearing, and sports have kind of opened up where it used to be dress codes and whatnot.
So you were an intern at Adidas Originals, is this? Or is this Adidas like the hub?
Yeah, so Portland is a regional office. So the actual headquarters is in Germany. The global headquarters is in Germany. And when I was an intern, I was working, it was a function called account marketing. The role was basically the brand would come up with these brand marketing campaigns or these brand narratives, these initiatives, or these product launches, and they would have kind of their seasonal plan. And then the account marketing team's job was to say, all right, how do we take that and bring that to life through wholesale or like retail accounts. So at the time I was working with Macy's, Kohl's, Famous Footwear. And so the idea was like, how do we take, if Superstar is a shoe that's important to Adidas at that time and is something that we're trying to push, how do we bring that to life in a way that's relevant to the folks that shop at Nordstrom.
I mean, you've obviously then seen that full change, right? From like literally marketing in stores and to now, like,
Yeah.
I bet you're being pushed to do as much on TikTok as possible. Right? How has that journey been?
Yeah, it's been cool. I've been fortunate. My goal was always to kind of get to the space that I'm in now, which is more at the center, I would say, of like the marketing ecosystem. So there's all the different
you can
levers.
look at everything, I guess, like
Yeah.
all the places the marketing can go.
Yeah, you sit with an idea or a piece of content, and then it's what levers do I want to pull to accomplish whatever objective that I've set out for the task at hand. And so I think it's been cool because I've done a little bit of retail marketing, done a little bit of visual merchandising, done a little bit of digital marketing, social. So getting to touch kind of all of those things to now be in the point where you can start to, you have a better understanding of each of the levers that you can pull and the nuance that comes with that. So that's been cool. And I would say, like, you know, I'm glad that I didn't just jump straight into brand marketing and that centerpiece, because I wouldn't have the knowledge or the understanding of everything that comes around it.
I guess in a way that was like the early stages of like pop-ups, right? It
Yeah,
was like the more traditional pop-up, I guess.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And we were doing a lot of those as well, and in partnership with, you know, different retailers like a Foot Locker. The beauty of that type of work is like you have this concept that you dream up, and then you can see it physically. You can walk into it.
Yeah, I always say like you have an idea, and then suddenly you walk on this set and there's like 200 people and they've like built your like idea, and you like walk in your idea and you're like, fuck.
Right.
Yeah. It's
You're like, I
cool,
dreamt this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what it felt like. And it was kind of a juncture at that point where I was like, all right, I enjoy this and I'm pretty good at it. And if I continue down this path, I can probably rise much quicker through the ranks and whatnot, because it's more of a linear path. But I might be pigeonholing myself in a way that I maybe don't want to be.
Yeah.
And with the world going digital and with online commerce, it wasn't even like new at that time. It was a thing.
Good decision.
Yeah, I was like, all right, I'm going to go get some digital experience. And it was right around the time when the originals category, so I wasn't in originals until that point.
Right.
And that was right around when the originals business started to take off the heels of some really incredible footwear, like NMD was right around that time.
Was that around the time when they did the Adidas house party commercial?
That was a little bit before. I think I was like 5 years after that, but that's a great one too.
It was 5 years after that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's up there, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Shout out Nima, who made that. Amazing ad there. Yeah.
And that's the spirit that I think we're trying to regain as a brand, is just kind of this rebellion and this level of like rawness, and just this is this brand. But it's funny that you brought that up, because we've been referencing that that film quite a lot.
And what would you say was like your like biggest moment? Like when do you feel like you were like, fuck yeah, probably going to Adidas Basketball?
That was a big one. The work that we just put into the world a couple weeks ago, and there's I guess a recency bias there because it's the most recent and the latest project. But I think that the film, the Remember the Why film, I think I sent that one to you, to me was one of the most rewarding projects, just because we started 2 months ago. We kind of had a reset. We were changing course, changing direction, and obviously like relatively late to produce something like that. You would want more time.
Yeah.
But we had a bit of a reset moment, and we got together really quickly with our internal creative team and some folks in Germany that are really helping drive the vision for the brand. And we sat down with them, we got aligned, came together and really kind of talked about where we wanted Adidas Basketball to go. And then we just started running, and then we just started getting into it. And it was just nonstop for the last 2 months. Like, I mean, I'm sure you know that world so well. Yeah. And it was just an inspiring body of work, I think, because it was getting back to what makes Adidas or Adidas Basketball so great. And so I would say that film, just the way that we went about it, the process, the decisions that we made along the way, the folks that we worked with, everything about the process was fun and rewarding.
So for people watching, or listening, like, I guess getting to work with Adidas or getting to create with Adidas.
I think the biggest thing, and it's ironic, right? Originals, the category, but it's just an original point of view. Folks that really bring themselves through their work and bring honesty through their work and want to tell honest stories and do it in a way that feels different and that doesn't feel like it's chasing something that already exists, but rather kind of charting something new. And that's easy to say and it's hard to find, I think.
Yeah, what does make someone unique and special? And I think obviously everyone's special, but I think what makes everyone special as well is just your unique POV. As a director, at least, it's like you kind of can't try and be someone else just to get like a job or to do something else. You have to just kind of be yourself.
And I think you can tell. I was watching this Rick Rubin and Stormzy interview. I think it was for ID. Did you watch that one?
No, I haven't. I watched bits of it.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
it looks amazing.
anything Rick Rubin does, I'm like soaking that up.
Absolute icon, yeah.
But they were talking about it yesterday, and what they were talking about was the desire and the need to create for yourself. And it's something that I think Pharrell talks about quite a bit in just watching his interviews and whatnot. But it's like you can tell when someone's creating for themselves versus like trying to create for other people.
100%. And how involved are you in the creative process behind the campaigns?
Quite involved, right? So the way that we'll typically approach the work is there's a variety of different types of campaigns, whether it's brand like Remember the Why wasn't so much about the film that we just put out, and the work that we just put out wasn't so much about product. It was more about kind of positioning the brand,
the
or
culture of the company and stuff.
The ethos and the spirit. And other ones are about footwear that we're launching or shoes and whatnot. So it varies in terms of like the type of project, but always our team is at kind of the forefront writing the brief. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about kind of the story that we want to tell, whether it's for a shoe or for the brand or for an event in a moment. And our team's writing the brief. So we'll put pen to paper. What's the context? What's the background? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the objectives? What does success look like? And what are the considerations that you have to take into account, whether it's with the landscape or how much product's going into the marketplace or where it's being sold or what's important. And then we're working with our internal creative team, like I mentioned, the team that's based in Germany. And we're taking the brief to them first, and they're coming back to us with kind of creative inspiration or creative expression and thoughts on like how it can be visualized or how it can come together, the tone that we want to get to. And so we're working with them through that process, and then together we go to a creative agency.
Even when you're at that kind of top level of creativity, it's still about like, what is the meaning and the messaging, or like what are we trying to say basically?
Yeah, or what problem are we trying to solve, right? Like what's the opportunity that we're trying to address with this piece of work or this campaign or this initiative? If you can figure that out, the solution typically is quite easy. And then the ideas come from that, right?
Which kind of exactly reinforces like what I feel I try and do, which is like solve the problem as well.
Yeah.
You know, like I think sometimes as creatives, people can get too obsessed with their own creative rather than solving the other creative problem. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny. There's been a few projects that we've worked on where you start with kind of a clear brief and a clear intent, and then you brief it, and you're going through the creative process. You're going through rounds of creative and different concepts and different ways in to tell the story or scripts or whatever it might be, and then you land on something, and you're like, okay, we love it. We think that this is going to accomplish the end goal.
It doesn't come out like that.
And then you go through the process, and then you're having fun on set, and you're throwing all these things into it, and then you go in post-production, and you're kind of pulling it together, and then you finish with this end result, and you're like, it's really artistic, or it's really beautiful, or it's really interesting, but it doesn't actually communicate the message at all. And maybe less so in music videos, I don't know, because there is a level, but when you're doing ad campaigns or you're trying to like convince someone of something, it's important that the message lands.
100%. Sometimes people think parameters are bad, but actually having the parameters means that you can go wild inside those parameters. Rather than when there's no parameters, you're kind of a bit lost. I think there was a test done with like rats or something that was like one of them was in some of them were in a cage and some of them weren't. And these ones became super resourceful and like built these things and were like, you became more intelligent when these guys were just didn't know where to be.
I've heard that from different like creatives that we've worked with, like agency creatives, like creative directors, and they'll say the best thing that you can give us is a box, because then we know what we're breaking out of. But if we don't have that, then exactly what you said. You're kind of just like fumbling.
I would say it's like learn the rules before you break them, right? It's like you have to know what the thing is before you break it. Exactly.
Yeah.
What is your favorite commercial of all time?
What Apple did with Think Different to me was so memorable because it didn't contain any products, but it was all about associating these iconic individuals that would have been Mac users or Apple users had they been around with the brand and the product, and it was about communicating like an ethos and a spirit and the type of people that use this product. There's something like really interesting in that, right?
Definitely, because I think that as we move forward, like as creatives trying to understand how to advertise in just different ways now, right? Because it is changing.
I was reading something about it last night. There was like someone's take on it, and I don't disagree. I mean, they were referencing just how we become so obsessed with data and making sure that everything can work and like pre-planning and hoping. And I think there was something really nice in that era where it was like trusting the process, and not to say that you weren't testing. And you referenced, I think there was this kind of like creative ambition that existed. We have a new head of creative for our brand, and we were talking as we were kind of developing. He was heavily involved in the work that we put out, and he was saying like you go through this process, and what you start with this idea of like having really sharp edges or kind of being more fearless and rebellious with the work, and then you go through the process, and more people see the work, offer opinions, and then the edges get rounder and rounder and rounder, and then what you end up delivering is like trying to appeal to everybody
100%,
as opposed to saying we're going to stay really sharp here with one single idea done in a way that we feel is true to the initial intent and is risky, and if it's not for everyone, that's fine. But the people that it's for will really love it, and the people that it's not might still remember it. And I think there's something
incredibly well said. That, yeah. I mean, I would agree with that 100%. Because I always say this, like, and I say it to the crew on the job, but I also say it to like the clients as well. As like, if it's not like mine, it's not yours, and it's nobody's. It's like if it has no real
personality,
or perspective, or any of these things, it just becomes that middle ground. And like for me, the middle is like
the worst place.
The worst place. And I think stuff gets in the middle so quick. Yeah, for like any smaller, newer brands, like anyone watching, like what advice would you have for a smaller brand trying to kind of cut through?
I would say like have a point of view.
Yeah.
You know, like have a perspective as a brand, have a personality as a brand. And oftentimes the people that work at the brand have these personalities, or they have this vision for the personality that the brand should imbue or embody. And I think, like we talked about, it's easy to just kind of play this middle ground of like we're trying to appeal to everyone.
Yeah.
Figure out who you want to appeal to, and then build personality into your brand. And I would say also like be willing to take risks. I think Liquid Death is great in that regard, and they're not a small brand by any means now, but like the way they grew is they had a strong.
And you're right. It's like they weren't trying to please everyone, right?
No.
Like there's I don't actually even like the brand, right? But I know who I don't like the brand, but I mean, it's not for me. But I know the brand, and I actually respect the brand because I'm like, right on. You're doing something that's like your lane, you know.
Yeah.
Which is rare now.
It's rare, and I think and being willing to experiment. Like if a new platform pops off, like TikTok. Dig into it, experiment with it, kind of like you're doing, you know, like you gotta and be willing to get uncomfortable with your brand, not inappropriate or not anything that is like over the line.
Sure.
But I think that would be my main. It was like have a personality, stand for something.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Weber.
Went quick.
Huh?
So that went quick.
Went quick.
Yeah, they cover a lot. That was great.
It's a social place.